The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome back to Key Pacific's talkaboutstrata.com. A few websites that might be helpful for listeners. The Condominium Homeowners Association this fall are hosting insurance seminars across the province. And if you go to the website www.choa.bc.ca, you can get the information on the times, locations, content of the seminars. And as a Strata corporation, Strata owner, a renter, a tenant, an occupant, any of the people, anyone who's involved with the Strata, this is a great opportunity to basically learn about how your insurance for your Strata corporation works. We have Albert Atfield from CanStar Restorations and Gordon Lee in the studio with us from CMW Insurance. We have an email that I get literally hundreds a week from readers in the province, and we have an email from Emily in North Vancouver that has a claim that relates to her Strata lot. And I have to say it was a little gruesome when I got her email because I didn't think insurance claims could take this long, but evidently they after a few phone calls and checking things out, things actually have gone badly for her. So here's her email. In January of 2013, there was a water leak in the Strata lot above her that caused by the owner doing their own construction, which is always a disaster in every strata when owners take on their own construction. It occurred during the day when she was at work, and the claims adjuster estimated that there was almost 300 gallons of water discharged before the strata finally managed to shut the main system off in the building. So obviously they don't have shutoffs in each strata lot, which gives us an indication this may be an older building. At first, the strata insisted it was her insurance to be responsible until her insurance provider demanded the strata provider proceed with the claim. It was taken over 18 months to complete the repairs, and so much time has elapsed that she now has concerns about damage to the exterior walls of her units, as the drywall in some of those areas was also wet but has not been restored. So is this normal for an insurance claim, and how does she recover her expenses that have grown to over $10,000? So Gordon, I'm just going to ask you the first question quickly. Is it normal for a claim to take this long?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
Something's definitely gone wrong here. Especially if insurance company's been contacted.
Yes.
Tells me there's something way more to this than what meets the eye.
It's a big complication, and she needs to get some advice on how to get this resolved and get it shut down. And Albert, you deal with claims, and you, through CanStar, you deal with all of the response and the process of restoration of buildings. What are the kind of things? So take this scenario. You've had this huge water leak, and maybe it damaged one unit, maybe it damaged 30 units, maybe it damaged 3 units. But what's your first approach? You're on site. What's the first thing that happens?
Well, the first thing you want to do is assess the site. You want to find all the trapped water that may have been escaped from the situation. So we start with the top unit, wherever the escape went, follow with whatever types of tools you're going to use, be it a FLIR camera, moisture meter sensors, whatever it is, and work your way, track all the water, find all the areas of concern in the building. If that's 1 unit or 30 units, it's irrelevant. Find it all. Address that with a drying procedure. Open up the cavities that are required to address the drying properly. Once you do all that, it's a matter of putting together a scope of work for the broker or the insurance adjuster, and then moving forward with the claim once approved. So it's pretty straightforward. Right. It's not a complex scenario. It's a process that's relatively the same every time. It doesn't change. It's just a matter of process, and as long as you stick to the process, I think everything works out fine, and all the documents are filed to the insurances or the people that are making the decisions. The process should move relatively quickly, and that's just normal.
So the delays here, probably a variety of misunderstandings, probably miscommunications, probably expectations that weren't managed properly. You know, one of the issues that we see with strata corporations, especially stratas who've had so many claims for water escape, older buildings or newer buildings where they have plumbing problems, and they have individuals that have caused multiple claims. Their insurance deductibles have gone up to $25,000 or $50,000, and so we end up with an insurance deductible that's $25,000, but the claim is only $21,000. Who's responsible to manage the claim now if it's only isolated in one unit?
Well, for our case, I would deal with, if I'm hired by the strata, I'm going to deal with all strata related work as I'm requested by be it Quay Pacific, the property manager. So
Right.
I would work on the strata related work only. Each individual homeowner would then have their own policy to deal with the separate issues.
We hope.
We hope. Now, there's where it gets complex, because we all know that not everybody believes that they require a personal policy to protect themselves. And this can sometimes create a complex scenario where the time frame can get expanded due to that, because now you've got to deal with that contents, any TIs, which tenant upgrades, whatever it is that makes the process have to get to the end. We have to address all those things, and somewhere in here there may be something that we're not 100% sure of that could have caused some of those delays.
So, Gordon, we have an amount below a deductible. Your brokerage obviously provides insurance for homeowners as well as for strata corporations. How does the homeowner insurance come into play for the homeowner policy?
What will happen is that most of the time, if for sure, if they have a homeowner's policy, they'll contact the homeowner's insurance, knowing that right away is below deductible. That homeowner's insurance should kick in and provide a coverage for the repairs to that unit
Right.
and the tenant and their improvements.
Right.
Where we see sometimes there's issues with that is that some policies will have wording was where they'll ask that the property manager has to then put in writing that they're going to assess that deductible back to the unit owner to trigger the policy.
Right.
I think the more commonly, the more, I guess, as time goes on, a lot of insurance companies learn that, they're going to be responsible for it. So really, should they waste the time to go ask a property manager to provide something in writing that there's going to be assessment back to trigger the assessment part of that policy,
Right.
the loss assessment portion of the policy. And that today, that's why those policies are becoming more valuable and why people need it, because these deductibles, Tony, as you say, could be $25,000, $50,000, and without that policy, regardless of whether the unit owner feel they're at fault or not, they're going to be on the hook, or will have to deal with that mess and try to collect that money later from somebody else.
So it's an interesting little quandary, though, we see in the industry. Non-strata detached homes, by and far, most people have insurance for their homeowner content insurance, right?
And partly because mandatory by their mortgage.
Well, mandatory by their mortgage, but even if they don't have a mortgage,
Yes.
they have homeowner insurance. CUP protects them for fire, it protects them from storm, water escape damage, break and enters, a variety of things that they're covered for. Their general liability. One of the bizarre things we see in the strata industry is there is actually a very large portion of the population who don't have either homeowner insurance, landlord insurance for their unit, or content insurance if they're a tenant. And that's where owners now find that they're getting stuck with these large amounts, whether it's the deductible or the amount below the deductible, because they just simply didn't have insurance. And it's not that costly.
No, it's not. And I think probably the reason still is that they don't have the education or in face of the problem, where I think most people think that I buy into strata, I pay monthly maintenance, so strata's got insurance, so really I don't really have to worry about anything else because my contents are not worth that much, or that I got a good security system so people won't break in, and if there's a claim, it's not going to be my fault. Little do they realize that these deductibles are very important now, compared
Right.
to 15 years ago when I started in business. We generally see those deductibles at, $1,000, so not that big of a deal. But commonly, I think on a high rise, minimum you're going to see is $10,000.
So I'm a homeowner. There's been a bathtub overflow upstairs. My unit's damaged. It's going to be below the strata's deductible, which might be $10,000. So hopefully I have homeowner insurance to go to my homeowner policy. What's my deductible as a homeowner going to be in most of those policies?
Most will be 500, maybe 1,000 the most.
So it's a pretty good deal with perspective.
It's a great deal
compared to the kind of costs you're going to end up facing and the
Yes.
risks that are associated with it. So no matter whether you have insurance or not, if the damage is below the deductible, it's your responsibility. You're going to have to affect its repairs and its restoration. One of the issues, though, that I have real concerns about in this industry, and I think that, Albert, this is something you should talk to, because it's a real problem, is I always think of what lies beneath or of what lies in the walls, is that people who have these claims where there's been water damage to their unit, they don't do the restoration of the unit. What happens over time to the building systems?
Well, over time, water changes grade relatively quickly. If you have a freshwater flood today, within 3 days, we're looking at basically black water.
Right.
So that being said, we've now got a bacteria growth issue. We have possible growth issues and all these types of things that could occur in the walls or wherever that water may be. It could be even in a ventilation system where water's sitting there stagnant in the pipes, or it could be in an electrical system and it could create shorts. There's all different kinds of areas where this water can cause a problem. But the worst thing you can do is actually ignore it.
Right.
The best thing you can do is address it and at least get it to the dry state. Like I'm a firm believer that if we get it into the dry state, we clean up the problem. You may have some holes in your ceiling, you may have some missing flooring, some missing carpets, but at least the building's going to maintain a health factor that I think is important to everybody involved in the building. And we have to consider, I'm a firm believer that when we live in strata lots specifically, that we're part of a bigger family here. So it's not just about me. I have to consider how I can affect other people by not dealing with it properly. And the other thing is that, and maybe Gordon can explain this, is if you, the person, decides to pretend it's not there, now you've got neglect happening. Now it'll just progressively get worse, and the spores will spread, and the problem will spread into different areas. It could be in all different types of the areas of the structure. So you want to get it opened up. You want to get rid of all the wet materials that need to be removed. Some of them may be able to be dried in place with the proper type of thought process being put into it by the contractor. And that's the best way to move forward with it. I mean, the rest of it will take its course, and it may take a little while to get it fixed, but the first part is the most important, and that's taking care of the wet and the problem. The resolution of the problem is the most important thing first.
We've also seen in the past few years now sewer backup in buildings that's been occurring, and that is not, everyone just assumes that's toilets overflowing, things like that, but it's not just that. It's also related to backup through tubs and through showers and through sinks. A lot of it connected to a lack of or neglect that's associated with not maintaining the building's drainage systems. And part of the responsibility of the strata is to maintain the building systems that they have. So that's one of the difficulties we have. It's like the slow perpetual leak under the sink. You have a tap that's leaking a little bit and it leaks for 6 months or a year. It's no longer an insurance claim, is it, Gord?
No, because the general insurance excludes seepage and leakage over a long period of time. So if you catch it right away, there's damage, you can claim it. But now if it goes on for 6 months, all that resulting damage for the neglect or not knowing is not going to be covered.
Right. So we have a sewer backup, or we have a gray water release somewhere in the building. What are the kind of health hazards, Albert, that we're kind of facing?
Well, they grow immensely. I mean, you've got bacteria issues that fall into that, and also the mold issue that could fall into it immensely. So, you could affect respiratory, all different types of problems can arise from ignoring it. So yeah, you need to move quickly on it. It's not something to play with, and I'm not a biologist, but I do know that it is extremely important to deal with the problem today, not later, not drag your feet about it, because we have to consider, back to what I said earlier, we live in an environment where it's a family thing and we want to take care of all of us. So
it's a complicated problem for strata corporations too, because they've got a major claim. How does it appear within the minutes of the strata corporation meetings? Do future owners know about these claims? Were they properly restored? Is there any kind of disclosure? And we've certainly had some scenarios where that's occurred, that strata corporations are facing bigger problems left from resultant damage. But here's a question for you, Gord. So we've had a claim that hasn't been properly restored. The water has been left in some of the cavities, and we've now resulted in mold and other issues in the building. What does that do? Is that an insurable claim now at a later date?
No, it's not, unfortunately, and because on your standard policy, mold is excluded. And the insurance company knows the only reason mold exists is because it's the neglect. So whether that's from, a claim, or someone leaving a bathroom very with high moisture level and not letting it dry properly, that mold coverage is excluded from a property point of view and a liability point of view. So what Albert says, for example, unit owner decides to do their own restoration improperly, and now molds grow out of the unit, and other people start getting sick and affected by it because this mold now is growing and expanding through, through the building, what happens is that, and lawsuits arise. That unit owner that's the original cause of that problem is going to be a huge amount of problems because there's no insurance coverage for them on the resulting damage, nor the liability that, you could cause injuries or damages to other people's health.
Well, and we had an owner who emailed us last year on the show about this very issue. They bought a unit and started doing some renovation to the unit and pulled up hardwood flooring that looked like it had been water damaged. And so they wanted to change it, and it was all done with the permission of the Strata Corporation, to discover that there was still water under the flooring and that there was all kinds of mold in the walls. So, the restoration to the Strata lot literally cost them tens of thousands of dollars just because of the neglect over the water escape issue, which clearly the owner had to have known about at some point. So the owner of the Strata lot ends up paying the price for it, or the Strata Corporation, when we end up with dry rot and decay and other problems in between the Strata lots.
Yeah, there's some challenging situations in that respect too. I've seen where some buildings will have a tenant that rents off of, maybe he's renting off of Tony.
Right.
And what happens is then that fellow has a problem in there, a water escape, but doesn't tell the homeowner. Now, when that tenant leaves, you've got an affected unit that's been wet for how many months, weeks? We don't know. And hence, when we go in there, because we've been called into a new escape, we have all this pre-existing issues, which creates another issue for insurance policies again. So the addressing the problem it's the old saying where, you know what, tell me the problem now, it's easier for me to help you fix it. The longer you let it sit, the worse it's going to get and the harder it's going to be to deal with.
And of course, the more it's going to cost everybody, and likely the Strata Corporation and the homeowners. I'm Tony Giventu. This is 650's Talk About Strata. If you have any questions, you can email us at questions@talkaboutstrata.com, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call. And there's more still ahead on AM 650.